Theo nodded in agreement and began analyzing the sea demon's abilities in detail, explaining how such a change might have occurred. One Eye's expression darkened when he heard this, especially when he realized that other masters might accidentally kill Jasper without knowing the truth. He asked anxiously when Jasper might return to normal, but Theo admitted honestly that he wasn't certain whether that was even possible. Lowering his head slightly, One Eye sincerely thanked them both for bringing Levi and Jasper back safely. The messenger simply pouted, closed his eyes, and turned away. Theo, on the other hand, proudly slapped his chest and declared that helping them had been a matter of honor. One Eye smiled politely and added that both of them were far superior in cultivation level, meaning they deserved the utmost respect from everyone in the department. He also assured them that if they ever needed anything, the entire department would gladly assist them. After confirming that Levi and Jasper were both safe, One Eye excused himself and left to report the situation back to headquarters. Once he had gone, Theo curiously looked around the room and remarked with admiration that human houses in this world were very unusual. He awkwardly touched the glass door, amazed by the high ceilings and the bright light filling the space, which clearly irritated the messenger. Theo continued observing everything and commented that humans in this world seemed extremely clever and hardworking. However, the rooster silently thought that for someone as clueless as Theo, everyone else would probably seem like geniuses. After some time passed, Levi finally woke up. The hero slowly rubbed his sleepy eyes, sat upright, and automatically murmured Jasper's name. Jasper, still in his small demon dragon form, was sleeping peacefully on the pillow beside him. Levi glanced at him and confirmed that he had not yet woken up. Just then someone called his name. Levi turned his head and saw the herald standing nearby, while Theo stood beside him with an extremely satisfied grin. The blond man suddenly pulled out a frozen merman tail from spatial storage and asked Levi if he wanted it. Levi immediately turned away with obvious disgust and firmly said that he didn't need it. The herald's eyes instantly lit up with excitement, and he almost began drooling while staring greedily at the meat. Theo was about to take the prize for himself, but suddenly remembered that Levi and Jasper still believed the herald to be a girl. This meant he would have to keep up the act, and the thought of pretending made him cough awkwardly. In the end, he announced that since Levi didn't want the tail, he and his beloved would turn it into soup. The messenger froze like a statue, but Levi didn't even react and casually allowed them to take it. Both demons immediately thanked him happily. Soon afterward, the long-awaited dish made from the demon tail was finally prepared. Before long, a steaming cauldron of fragrant fish soup appeared on the table, filling the room with a rich and tempting aroma. The rich, mouth-watering aroma drifting from the food was impossible to ignore. The moment the scent reached them, both the messenger and Theo instinctively lifted their heads. Their eyes brightened with clear excitement, like hungry travelers finally catching the smell of a long-awaited meal. The very first bite dissolved almost instantly on their tongues. The flavor spread warmly through their mouths, so soft and delicious that it felt like it melted before they even finished chewing. A wave of pure satisfaction washed over them, and their expressions lit up with genuine delight. They didn't bother hiding how much they enjoyed it. Smiles appeared naturally as they continued eating, savoring every bite. Between mouthfuls, they scooped up large bowls of rice, happily washing down the rich taste while eating with obvious enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Jasper was still deeply asleep, completely unaware of the lively atmosphere around him. Levi sat quietly beside him, staring down at the small demon curled up in slumber. His expression looked troubled, his gaze lingering on Jasper with a heavy and worried mood. When someone finally handed Levi a bowl of rice, he instinctively hesitated. His hands paused in midair, and he seemed reluctant to accept it, as if his mind was still too occupied with concern to think about eating. Seeing his hesitation, Theo gently spoke to him in a calm and reassuring voice. He patiently explained that Jasper's strange transformation wasn't permanent and that everything was under control. His tone carried a quiet confidence meant to ease Levi's worries. The demon added further explanation, calmly saying that Jasper's aura remained steady and stable. There was no danger at all. According to him, Jasper was simply sleeping deeply and would naturally wake up once his body recovered. After listening for a moment, Levi finally let out a quiet breath. His tense shoulders relaxed slightly. At last, he accepted the bowl, held it properly in both hands, and slowly began eating. Theo watched the scene unfold with a warm and satisfied smile. Even the herald, who usually kept a cold and unreadable expression, seemed quietly pleased. Though his face remained stern, the faint softness in his eyes betrayed his inner relief. At that exact moment, the system's mechanical voice suddenly echoed through the air. It calmly announced that the host's depleted energy had now been fully restored. Not only that, but additional reserves had accumulated, enough to sustain the host for an entire year ahead. After hearing the announcement, Theo calmly reached into his storage and took out several shimmering blue pearls along with a single striking red pearl. He carefully handed them to Levi, explaining that these were rare merman tears discovered on the island. Among them, the red pearl was the most extraordinary. Theo explained that such a treasure was incredibly rare, so rare that a seaman would usually obtain only one in his entire lifetime, if he was lucky enough to see one at all. The system immediately reacted to the pearls as if sensing their value. Its interface almost seemed to stretch toward them, confirming that these items were precisely what Levi currently needed for recovery and strengthening. Without wasting time, Theo politely helped the protagonist process the items. He carefully crushed the pearls into a fine powder and gently sprinkled the glowing dust over the rice Levi was eating, making sure it mixed evenly. Levi glanced down at the bowl, now faintly shining in his hands. His cheeks turned slightly red, perhaps from embarrassment or surprise. Still, he didn't hesitate. With determination, he ate every single grain of rice without leaving anything behind. Almost the moment he finished, the system chimed again. A notification appeared announcing that the host's mental strength had increased dramatically. In addition, his resistance against mental attacks had improved by a significant margin. Later that night, the quiet of darkness settled over the area. Levi and Jasper were both fast asleep. During the peaceful silence, the system's main module quietly reported that the promised reward had finally been delivered. Not far away, however, the messenger was clearly not sleeping peacefully. He kept tossing and turning in his bed. His face slowly turned an unhealthy shade of purple, and cold sweat soaked through his body, as if something was terribly wrong. Inside his dream, he felt as if he were sinking deep into the ocean. Endless water surrounded him, dragging him downward little by little. His breathing grew heavier with every second, and his eyes slowly turned bloodshot from the suffocating pressure. His body twisted restlessly on the bed as if fighting an invisible enemy. The demon struggled for air, gasping and breathing unevenly while trapped in the nightmare. Suddenly, his eyes snapped wide open. A powerful pressure pressed down on his chest, making it difficult to move or breathe properly. The moment he realized that something was literally sitting on top of him, the herald reacted instantly. Without hesitation, he revealed his true form, his presence becoming far more imposing. His muscles tightened with sudden fury. Gathering his strength, he violently pushed against the source of the pressure, determined to throw it off no matter what it was. When he finally saw what had been weighing on him, his expression darkened even further. The sight felt strangely familiar. After staring for a second, he suddenly realized exactly what it was. A furious phoenix roar suddenly shattered the quiet, loud enough to wake Theo instantly. The messenger angrily shouted that this idiot still hadn't gone away yet. Theo immediately shrank back with an awkward look. He raised his head nervously and reminded him, somewhat confused, that the bird had supposedly been sent back last time already. The messenger rolled his eyes in clear irritation. After thinking for a moment, he realized something embarrassing. They had been living together so naturally that he had simply forgotten to drive the bird away. Recognizing his mistake, he quickly summoned a portal and forced a cheerful goodbye, praising it awkwardly for doing a good job. Theo looked like he was about to cry. His face was full of grievance as he complained that he was being kicked out far too quickly again, almost as if he wasn't even welcome to stay. The messenger simply waved his hand dismissively, clearly feeling a bit awkward about the whole situation. In his mind, he silently decided that next time it might be smarter not to summon this troublesome bird at all. Now, let's shift the story back slightly, to about one day earlier on the island. High above the endless blue ocean, a massive golden bird soared through the sky. On its broad back rode Sarah along with 3 severely injured soldiers who could barely move. Sarah stood firmly despite the powerful wind rushing past them. She crossed her arms confidently while standing under the strong gusts, her hair whipping wildly in the air. The enormous bird flew swiftly toward the distant city. Its mission on Sand Island had already been completed successfully, and now it was returning at great speed. However, the situation was somewhat ironic. Sarah had not been the one who brought the masters from the other 4 countries to the island. She had simply ended up escorting them safely back home. Back at headquarters, inside one of the offices, the commander calmly gave new orders. He told them that Levi could take time to rest while he himself would go discuss the current situation with the Joint Department. At the same time, the rotating leader of the organized crime group, Vasily, began questioning his fighters. He wanted a detailed explanation of everything that had happened on the island. Steven stepped forward and reported that they had encountered a terrifying water-type demon ranked at the level of a lord. The creature possessed an almost absolute defensive ability. Vasily immediately followed up with a sharp question. He wanted to know whether their powerful combat robot had been destroyed during the battle. Steven responded with a small grin and shook his head confidently, indicating that the answer was no. However, he added something unexpected. The one who destroyed the enemy was actually the fighter from Lungo. Hearing this, Vasily then turned toward Mail and asked another question about what had happened to the frozen demon. The answer turned out to be exactly the same. That demon had also been eliminated by the very same ruler. The minister visibly stiffened upon hearing this. Sweat formed on his forehead as he turned his attention to the final participant, Hama. Lying in a hospital bed, Hama recalled that at the time he had been under mental control. Once he regained consciousness, things hadn't improved much. He was quickly defeated by the Lord of Lungo and then violently pushed away by blazing streams of scorching fire. After hearing the reports, Vasily asked another serious question. He wanted to know whether the newly ranked ruler from Lungo was truly stronger than all the others present. Mel slowly turned the handle beside him while explaining the situation. At that moment, everyone had been under control, and the 3 of them had attacked that ruler together. Even so, despite combining all their strength, they had been unable to defeat him. What made it even more unbelievable was that the ruler seemed to be fighting mostly on instinct. Vassal looked genuinely stunned by this explanation, though he gradually began to understand the overall situation. In the end, he stated that he would report everything to the 5 Nations Alliance. With that, he officially declared the meeting closed and wished everyone a quick recovery. However, Hemu suddenly stopped him before he could leave. He asked one last question regarding Levi's current condition. What he really wanted to know was simple. Was that guy even still alive? Vasily answered calmly. Levi had been seriously injured but was taken to Lungo together with Jasper thanks to the help of his mysterious pet. He also mentioned that almost no concrete information existed about that pet. However, it seemed to possess an unusual tracking ability. Hemu merely snorted dismissively and glanced away. Still, he admitted that the most important thing was that Levi survived, because he still hoped to face him in battle one day. Right after saying this, the man casually said goodbye to everyone present and ended the video call. Steven then spoke up, saying that since there were no more questions left to discuss, he would also take his leave. Afterward, Michael calmly summarized the situation. Even though everyone had been under control during the fight, none of them had actually been killed by that ruler. In fact, it seemed far more likely that the man from Lungo had single-handedly defeated the sea demon and saved everyone trapped on the island. Vasily nodded in agreement with this conclusion. Based on the data available about Levi's pet, it was entirely possible that the Water Lord had indeed been defeated directly by Levi himself. As he prepared to leave the room, Mel turned back with a faint smile and casually asked that if the chance appeared, his greetings should be passed along to Bishop Lungo. The connection abruptly cut off, leaving Vasily sitting alone in the quiet room. The screen went dark, and for a moment he simply stared at it, lost in deep thought, slowly piecing together everything he had just heard. After a long pause, he quietly concluded that Project 99 had failed once again. The result wasn't entirely unexpected, but it still left a bitter taste in his mind. The Alliance had created this entire initiative to encourage the growth of human strength. By building a ranking of the most powerful fighters, they hoped competition would push humanity forward. But now, the outcome seemed obvious to everyone. From all the reports and battle data, one thing was clear. The current number one fighter appeared to be the overlord-ranked warrior from Lungo. At the same time, the scene shifts away from that meeting and moves toward another country entirely, the state of Higwo. Inside a testing facility, a measuring device continued flashing warning signals. The machine reported that Sarah's combat power had completely exceeded its measurable limits. According to the calculations, her strength might have already reached the very peak of the Overlord rank. The moment the staff member saw those results, his attitude changed instantly. He began showering Sarah with enthusiastic praise, repeatedly telling her how incredible and astonishing her power truly was. Sarah lifted her chin slightly, unable to hide her pride. She could clearly feel the terrifying strength flowing through her body, and the sensation filled her with overwhelming confidence. A bright feeling of excitement bloomed in her chest. She could already picture the reactions of those three when they learned about her combat power reading. In her imagination, they would probably end up bowing at her feet. However, that proud fantasy suddenly paused when she remembered something important. The newly ranked ruler from Lungo and his brother had also been involved in the rescue operation on the island. Thinking about that immediately reminded Sarah of Levi. After all, he had helped her before, and she still remembered clearly how he used acupuncture to treat her relative. A strange question suddenly appeared in her mind. Could her sudden growth and strength somehow be connected to him? Almost as quickly as the idea appeared, she dismissed it. In her mind, the explanation seemed ridiculous. Levi was only a healer. After all, there was no way someone like him could make her this powerful. Still, the doubt refused to disappear completely. She rubbed her chin thoughtfully, trying to trace back the moment when this mysterious strength first appeared. Gradually, her thoughts shifted in another direction. She remembered that the others had mentioned a water demon on the island, one that specialized in powerful mental attacks. Then another memory surfaced. At that time, everyone had fallen under the demon's mental control. Everyone except her. Because she had been unconscious, the mental influence never reached her. She quietly muttered to herself while piecing the logic together. The more she thought about it, the more confident she became, and that earlier feeling of pride slowly returned. The conclusion amused her so much that she suddenly laughed out loud. In her mind, she proudly declared herself the strongest combat force in Higwo, beautiful, cold, and completely unstoppable. Just as she was enjoying her own thoughts, an employee suddenly interrupted her. He informed her that the organized crime group was about to publish a ranking list of humanity's strongest fighters. Sarah's face immediately brightened with interest. The employee explained that this was only a preliminary list of the top 10 combat powers among humans and offered to show it to her. However, the moment her eyes landed on the first name, the joy on her face disappeared instantly. At the very top of the list, rank number 1, was Levi. Sarah nearly screamed in frustration. She couldn't understand how Levi, of all people, had somehow ended up being labeled the strongest fighter. Meanwhile, in another location entirely, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief was studying that same ranking report carefully. If something like this had happened 200 years ago, the news would have shocked the entire world and caused widespread panic. Now history seemed to repeat itself. Lungo had once again climbed to the very top of global combat power, and Levi had taken the position of the world's greatest warrior. At that moment, the one-eyed man blinked in surprise as he commented that Levi would officially become Lungo's representative as the strongest man. Still, he carefully reminded everyone about a potential problem. If their earlier concerns proved true and Levi's mental diagnosis ever became public knowledge, the consequences could be unpredictable. Tracy tried to calm him down with a relaxed tone. She suggested they simply handle things step by step since they had already prepared countermeasures for any unexpected situation. Sean, however, remained the calmest person in the room. With a relaxed grin, he pointed out that the strongest man in the world would never truly be seen as mentally ill, even if the most respected organization confirmed such a diagnosis. He casually changed the topic and took a slow sip of water. Then he explained his reasoning. People wouldn't believe Levi was insane. Instead, they would think his mind simply operated on a level ordinary people couldn't understand. The one-eyed man suddenly realized the strange brilliance of that logic. A moment later, he burst into loud laughter that echoed through the room. Once he understood it clearly, the fear in his heart completely disappeared. Levi might truly be crazy, but his overwhelming strength was exactly what the world needed. In the end, even if Levi were technically a psychiatric patient, it wouldn't really matter. In this world, strength determined everything. Whoever was strongest was automatically right. Meanwhile, Levi himself sat quietly beneath a large tree. With his legs crossed and eyes calm, he listened patiently as the system continued delivering its report. After his recent increase in mental strength, his true thunder body had begun absorbing surrounding energy far more efficiently than before. The system happily reported that after the breakthrough in mental power, its energy reserves were overflowing. Because of that, it was finally able to begin the next stage of evolution. It then started reviewing all of Levi's abilities that had reached their limits. After scanning the data, it announced that the proficiency of the Crimson Fire skill had successfully reached 100%. Just then, Levi suddenly opened his eyes. The system immediately panicked, startled by the sudden interruption. She couldn't understand why the host had stopped concentrating on absorbing heavenly energy. After all, he was only one small step away from reaching the late stage of heaven. Levi simply lowered his gaze toward the small dragon coiled comfortably around his neck. Quietly, he noted that Jasper still hadn't woken up yet. After running several scans, the system concluded that Jasper's body was completely healthy. In fact, it appeared far stronger than expected. The most difficult part of absorbing the water demon's energy had been protecting the dragon during the process. Now, however, that powerful energy had fully fused with Jasper's body. Although the system couldn't fully analyze his scales, it discovered something astonishing. Their defensive power had reached a level that even a hero-class fighter would struggle to penetrate. Because of this discovery, the system's attitude toward Jasper changed dramatically. She suddenly realized there might be a method to speed up Jasper's awakening. At that moment, the one-eyed man approached Levi while holding a ranking list and announced that the preliminary top 10 combat power ranking had been completed. He explained that the list only required confirmation from Lord Lungo himself, but Levi simply pretended not to understand what he was talking about. Ignoring Levi's reaction entirely, the one-eyed man immediately stuffed the list into Levi's sleeve, not caring whether the young man had even looked at it. He casually declared that the confirmation was good enough, and then hurried off to report everything upstairs, clearly satisfied with his own efficiency. Levi sat there with a confused expression. At that moment, a system notification suddenly activated in his mind, announcing that a new location had just been unlocked. The sudden vibration woke the rooster nearby. At the same time, a connection successfully formed, and the process of duplicating the energy body began. The world around Levi suddenly froze as if time itself had stopped. Then a mechanical voice confirmed successful entry, and in the blink of an eye he found himself inside a strange and anomalous world. The scene appeared to be set in the year 2014, the period when anomalies once again began appearing across the entire world in massive numbers. Over the following 50 years, the global population had fallen dramatically. The devastation caused by these anomalies painted a truly horrifying picture of the world. After suffering enormous losses, humanity eventually managed to categorize the different types of anomalies. As a result, a unified global classification system was introduced. Humanity had faced countless terrifying disasters, but one type was especially feared. Whenever a Class S spirit appeared, it almost always meant that an entire city would soon be destroyed. By that time, there were already 10 such forbidden zones around the world, areas completely abandoned because of these deadly spirits, and the number kept increasing every few years. Another strange phenomenon had also been observed. Any anomaly that appeared during the blood moon was never weaker than B-class. In one particular region, a group of B-class demon slayers stood nervously outside an entrance. They hesitated, clearly afraid to step further inside. However, their captain, Charles, spoke in a cold and steady voice. He reminded them that there was no turning back. The anomalous aura had only appeared recently and hadn't yet reached above B-class. With a gentle push, the door slowly creaked open. From the darkness inside came an eerie voice, sounding almost welcoming, as if the unknown presence within was inviting them inside its home. The demon slayers slowly raised their weapons, their movements heavy with exhaustion after the long mission. Even so, each of them forced themselves to stay alert, tightening their grips and focusing their eyes straight ahead into the dark interior. One of the soldiers quietly stepped forward and checked the device in his hand. The small machine flickered softly as it continued scanning the surrounding spiritual energy. According to the anomalous compass, a grudge demon had been detected nearby. The device estimated its level at C-class, and the distance indicator showed it was roughly an hour away from their current location. Hearing that information caused the group's tense expressions to soften slightly. A C-class threat was still dangerous, but it was something their squad was trained and equipped to handle. A faint light shining through the dusty window suggested that the target might already be inside the house. The dim glow flickered strangely, making the building feel even more unsettling. With careful steps, the fighters finally moved inside. Each of them held their weapons tightly, scanning every corner as they advanced deeper into the silent structure. But the moment they clearly saw what was inside the room, their expressions changed instantly. Surprise and confusion spread across their faces. The entire room was overflowing with flowers and lush green plants. In the middle of this strange garden-like scene, a man lay completely motionless on the floor. The plants themselves glowed faintly with an unnatural light. Among them rested Jasper, his eyes closed as if he were simply sleeping peacefully within the sea of flowers. The team leader hesitated for a moment. Something about the spirit before them felt strange, almost too calm compared to the usual violent anomalies they encountered. Jasper's body gave off a soft, dim glow. Charles kept his weapon aimed directly at him, yet the man lying there showed no movement and emitted no trace of hostile or evil energy. Even more surprising were the readings from the spiritual compass. The assistant stared at the device in disbelief. The signal did not show a vengeful spirit at all, but instead registered a D-class spirit. At that same moment, something strange began creeping along the outside wall near the sentry. Thin appendages, resembling writhing tentacles, slowly slid across the ground. The eerie limbs quietly crawled closer from behind, slipping toward the soldier's helmet without making a sound. Suddenly a scream shattered the silence. When the others turned around, they saw Soldier B09 already wrapped up and being dragged out the door. Charles reacted instantly. Without hesitation, he shouted for the team to move and rushed after the captured soldier. Seeing the soldier suspended helplessly in the air, the captain immediately barked orders for Soldiers 8 and 10 to stay on high alert and cover the surroundings. The assistant's face suddenly turned pale. With obvious alarm in his voice, he informed the captain that the C-class spirit they detected earlier still had not actually appeared. Charles narrowed his eyes coldly. Without another word, he raised his weapon, deciding it was time for him to take action personally. A shot rang out sharply. The bullet burst from the muzzle and tore through the air toward the soldier, whose neck was being squeezed tighter and tighter by the creeping tentacles. Everyone expected the projectile to pierce the creature instantly. Instead, a sudden barrier appeared in its path. The bullet barely penetrated the shield before crumbling into fragments. In the next instant, a layer of glowing armor materialized. Within that light, a blurry silhouette appeared, clutching the soldier's head with disturbing force. Cracks spread across the protective shell as the figure lost its concealment. The witch revealed herself at last, opening her mouth wide and releasing a furious growl. The spirit extermination squad immediately realized the anomaly had fully manifested. Charles wasted no time and gave the order for everyone to open fire. Gunfire erupted instantly. The witch was buried under a storm of bullets, and each shot transformed mid-flight into a glowing net racing straight toward the spirit. She twisted and dodged desperately, but even while evading the attack, she refused to release the soldier trapped in her grasp. Then, at the worst possible moment for her, another bullet net suddenly appeared directly in front of her. Before she could react, the trap snapped shut and bound her completely. The deputy captain lifted his weapon calmly and observed that the vengeful spirit had now fully stabilized in physical form. Terrified by the scent of black dog blood, the witch suddenly began begging for mercy. Her cries were desperate, but the sound of a gunshot quickly drowned them out. The bullet tore straight through her head. In an instant, blood and shattered fragments of her spiritual body exploded into the air. After confirming the kill, the deputy captain checked the compass again. The device confirmed that the C-class vengeful spirit had been successfully eliminated. He then immediately asked about Soldier B09's condition. The soldier reported that his trachea had been slightly compressed, but fortunately there were no serious injuries. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, Jasper's soul slowly opened its eyes. The unfamiliar surroundings made the young man look around weakly. Confused, he wondered where he was, and more importantly, where Levi had gone. Suddenly, he noticed the barrel of a gun pointed directly at him. Startled, he flinched backward. One of the soldiers immediately reported that the dark spirit had regained consciousness. The deputy captain signaled for everyone to stay calm. Quietly, he observed that the D-class spirit was not showing any aggressive behavior yet. Even so, Charles didn't want to take risks. He slowly raised his weapon again, believing that eliminating the spirit immediately would be the safest decision. At that moment, Jasper finally realized the horrifying truth. He had become a ghost. Panic flooded his mind as he assumed they were preparing to kill him for exactly that reason. Just as the situation reached its most dangerous point, the deputy captain suddenly shouted in surprise about a strange green glow appearing nearby. The compass screen flashed brightly, updating its reading. A furious B-class spirit had just been detected. Following the emergency order, the squad immediately retreated from the area, leaving Jasper alone as he curled up in a corner of the abandoned castle. Only after the soldiers disappeared did Jasper slowly begin to relax. Nervously, he peeked outside to see if they were really gone. Even then, he remained tense. He was afraid the fighters might return at any moment to finish destroying him. The realization that he had become a wandering spirit filled Jasper with deep fear and confusion. Unable to stay there any longer, the young man suddenly rushed out of the villa. Under the eerie, blood-red moonlight, he ran forward with all the strength he had. Behind him, an ominous laugh suddenly echoed from inside the house, hinting that something far more dangerous might still be lurking there. As Jasper ran along the empty road, a deep, trembling fear gripped his heart while he tried desperately to figure out whether he had truly died. Shaking with fear, he began calling Levi's name again and again. At that moment, however, a girl suddenly appeared directly in front of him. Startled, he spun around and saw a small child standing there. Her face was covered in blood, and her wide eyes stared straight at him. A cold wave of terror ran down Jasper's spine. Convinced she was another ghost, he screamed loudly in panic. The girl quickly waved her hands in denial, shaking her head as if trying to prove that wasn't the case. Through tears, she explained that something terrible had grabbed her earlier. Crying helplessly, she called out for her mom and dad. Only then did Jasper suddenly realize something ironic. The real ghost here was actually him. The girl begged him for help. She explained that something had dragged her out through a window, slammed her into a pole, and knocked out several of her teeth, leaving her mouth in terrible pain. Confused, Jasper slowly lifted his head to look upward. There, he saw two evil spirits hovering above. Both were grinning wickedly while holding the girl by her legs. The poor girl swung helplessly in the air, crying loudly as the spirits suddenly lifted her even higher. One of the spirits laughed and said the height was perfect. The other suggested they release her just to watch her fall to her death. In the next instant, they let go. The girl dropped downward with a terrified scream. Even though he was only a spirit himself, Jasper rushed forward without thinking. Closing his eyes in fear, he managed to catch her just before she hit the ground. When he opened his eyes again, Jasper was shocked. Somehow he had moved through the air at incredible speed and realized that he could actually fly. However, the two spirits reacted instantly. They rushed toward Jasper with angry expressions, accusing him loudly of protecting a human even though he himself had already become a spirit. They sneered at him and declared that once someone became a spirit, their purpose was simple: to kill the living. In their twisted view, every human deserved to die at the hands of ghosts. As they spoke, the creatures spread out and closed the distance. In a matter of seconds, they surrounded Jasper completely, cutting off every possible escape route for him and the terrified girl. Holding the child tightly against his chest, Jasper nervously asked what they planned to do. His voice trembled slightly, but he still tried to reason with them. Instead of answering kindly, the spirits stretched out their clawed hands. With cruel smiles on their faces, they lunged forward, clearly intending to attack him. The two spirits began striking him again and again without mercy. Jasper endured the attacks while shielding the girl with his body, doing everything he could to keep her safe. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears silently slipping down his face as he realized something terrible. Ghosts could still feel pain. Then suddenly, without warning, a gunshot echoed through the air. A bullet sliced through the darkness and struck the green-haired spirit. The injured spirit froze in shock. Instantly, it realized what had happened. The spirit exterminators had arrived. Before the spirits could react, the fighters attacked swiftly. Within moments, both malicious spirits were completely destroyed. Jasper trembled violently, still clutching the girl in his arms. Suddenly, another gun was aimed directly at him, and a stern voice ordered him to release the child immediately. Charles and his entire squad stood nearby with their weapons raised. Every single gun in the group was cautiously pointed straight at Jasper. The trembling girl slowly turned around and looked at the soldiers. After a moment, she realized who they were, the spirit exterminators she had heard about before. Unexpectedly, she stepped forward and spoke up for Jasper. With a shaky voice, she insisted that this ghost had not harmed her at all. In fact, he had saved her life. Her words stunned everyone present. For a brief moment, the entire group simply stared in disbelief. One of the squad members frowned and quietly wondered aloud whether such a thing was even possible. Could there really be ghosts that did not harm humans? The deputy captain calmly answered that, according to all known records, no such cases had ever been documented before. Even so, everyone slowly turned their eyes toward Jasper again. After thinking about it carefully, they had to admit that he had never shown any sign of an evil aura. Charles remained silent for a moment, deep in thought. Finally, he suggested that this unusual ghost should be taken back for research. His deputy nodded in agreement. However, before they could continue the discussion, something strange suddenly happened to Jasper. A sharp humming sound rang painfully in his ears, followed by a loud warning cry. Almost at the same moment, a wooden stick shot through the air from somewhere nearby. It struck the deputy captain with terrifying speed. Everything happened so quickly that no one had time to react. In the blink of an eye, the man's body was pinned against a tree trunk, and all he could do was groan in pain. The spiritual compass slipped from his hand and dropped onto the ground. As it landed, its screen suddenly turned an ominous shade of purple. The glow on the display revealed a terrifying result. An A-class evil spirit had appeared. More precisely, it was an A- level threat. Within moments, the road turned into a horrifying battlefield. Bodies were scattered everywhere, and only 3 members of the fighter squad remained alive. The powerful A-class evil spirit eliminated the rest effortlessly. Afterward, she arrogantly stepped on the head of one of the fallen soldiers. The spirit introduced herself as Dead Girl. Then she turned her cold gaze toward Jasper and asked with chilling curiosity whether he was really protecting humans. Jasper and the girl beside him trembled in terror. Too frightened to speak, they slowly began backing away. Suddenly, a purple beam shot forward and pierced through Jasper's body, striking the girl standing behind him. She cried out in agony, coughing up blood as tears filled her eyes. Jasper instantly turned around and saw her body beginning to collapse. At that moment, a strange golden symbol flashed on his forehead. It was as if a fragment of the ancient primordial spirit from his past life had suddenly awakened. The girl fell to the ground as blood spread across the road. Seeing this, Jasper swung his hand forward and released a brilliant, glowing slash. He charged directly at Dead Girl. The dazzling attack startled the evil spirit so badly that she froze for a moment. The powerful strike blasted her backward. She slammed violently into a massive tree with a thunderous crash. Her expression twisted in pain, and dark blood poured from her mouth. Just then, the system suddenly appeared before Jasper, urgently warning him that he was only a fragment of the primordial spirit and far too weak to wield such power. A sharp pain exploded inside Jasper's head, yet the system continued speaking. It explained that this was a foreign world, and releasing such power here was extremely dangerous. If the energy were detected by the world's natural defenses, it would be purified immediately, without mercy. Jasper collapsed onto the ground, completely disoriented, while the system's voice kept echoing inside his mind. The system explained that it had brought him here in order to recover the scattered fragments. It asked him to hold on until its carrier completed the mission. While Jasper struggled to understand everything and argued with the system in confusion, Dead Girl quietly took advantage of the distraction. She suddenly rushed forward and grabbed him by the throat. Her face twisted with murderous intent, veins bulging as a cruel smile spread across her lips. The system screamed in panic, realizing that if Jasper died completely, nothing would remain except a trace of fading energy. However, Dead Girl's smile widened strangely. She murmured that simply destroying him would be far too boring. Lowering her head slightly, she suddenly released a loud and terrifying roar. In response to that cry, countless evil spirits began gathering from every direction. Still gripping Jasper's throat, Dead Girl coldly explained to the surrounding spirits that he was a traitor among them. She declared that this special ghost had betrayed their kind by protecting humans and ordered the others to deal with him properly. Not long before these events, a car had been speeding along a dark road. The driver reported that a D-class spirit had been detected, and headquarters had sent them to eliminate it. Levi, who served as the captain of the D-class spirit extermination squad, listened quietly from the back seat. His expression remained calm and unreadable. Behind him, several crew members whispered among themselves. They quietly discussed how, despite Levi being the captain, it was actually the deputy who gave most of the orders. One of the veterans explained to a new recruit that the situation was complicated. During training, the captain had reportedly been too afraid to shoot at spirits. Another man joked that their captain was terrified of ghosts. Hearing that, the new recruit looked confused, wondering what kind of strange unit he had joined. Eventually, the vehicle stopped near an old villa. The deputy captain announced that this was the exact location where the D-class spirit had been detected. Even though the deputy spoke confidently, Levi quietly felt fear stirring deep inside his chest. The deputy captain checked the compass and said the target was still about an hour away. He ordered everyone to prepare and follow him. One of the fighters nervously asked if this was really the villa. The deputy confirmed it and reminded everyone to stay alert. They forced the door open with a loud crack. Without hesitation, the deputy captain rushed in first with his gun raised. The moment he saw what was inside, his eyes widened in shock. Inside the room, they discovered a spirit bound tightly in special chains. The creature's body was covered in wounds, and its miserable appearance made it look weak and helpless. The deputy captain stepped closer, examining it carefully with growing curiosity. At that moment, Jasper slowly opened his eyes just a little. In a faint voice that was barely audible, he tried to warn the man, weakly telling him not to come any closer. The fighters instinctively looked up. The second-in-command commented casually that the spirit looked so fragile it could probably be destroyed by a single stray bullet. Meanwhile, Jasper's lips continued moving weakly. He struggled to speak, clearly trying his best to warn them and stop them from stepping deeper inside. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed behind them as the door slammed shut. The unexpected noise immediately put everyone on edge. The deputy captain turned sharply and demanded to know what had happened. One of the soldiers nervously reported that the door had closed by itself. Instantly, the squad regrouped tightly together. Each soldier gripped his weapon firmly while scanning the dark room with tense eyes. Then a strange voice echoed through the room. The eerie sound made it clear that something unpleasant was waiting for them. The deputy captain quickly pulled out his anomalous compass. The screen flashed immediately, confirming the presence of a C-class evil spirit nearby. His face turned pale at once. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead as he stuttered in realization they were trapped inside. Fury suddenly filled him. He turned sharply toward Jasper and cocked his gun, convinced that the chained spirit had been used as bait. In response, a ghostly head slowly emerged from the darkness. The evil spirit wore a creepy smile as it mockingly praised them for their sharp thinking. The creature suddenly opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth and a long, twisting tongue that moved like a snake. Standing face to face with that horrifying mouth, the man froze completely. As the monster moved closer, fear finally paralyzed his entire body. But just before the spirit could attack, a gunshot cut through the air. A bullet whistled past and struck across the head of the evil spirit. The spirit instantly collapsed into smoke and scattered away. The deputy captain remained standing there, frozen in shock. Only then did everyone realize who had fired the shot. Levi stood behind them, the barrel of his gun still smoking while his pale face remained tense. At that moment, an old memory suddenly resurfaced in Levi's mind. In the past, he had once stood like this as well, holding a weapon and aiming at a terrifying spirit. Back then, the monster had hidden behind his father, using him as a human shield. His father begged him to shoot, insisting that the spirit had already materialized. Little Levi trembled in terror, tears streaming down his face. He didn't know what to do because shooting would mean killing his own father. But the man gently urged him to pull the trigger. He told Levi that he believed in him, and that Levi had always been a source of pride for both him and his mother. With shaking hands, the young boy finally pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced through his father's body and destroyed the evil spirit behind him. Levi screamed in despair. When everything ended, the enemy was gone, but so was his father. Returning to the present, Levi trembled slightly before speaking loudly. He declared that he would keep shooting and destroying spirits until humanity finally saw the dawn. Just as he finished speaking, another evil spirit appeared silently behind him. The creature mocked him, asking what he was truly capable of. Cold sweat poured down Levi's face. Suddenly, the spirit's claws pierced straight through his body as it whispered cruelly in his ear that he was incapable of saving anyone. The claws were pulled out, and Levi lost his balance. He dropped to his knees while the rest of the squad shouted his name in panic. Despite the severe wound, Levi's determination remained strong. He refused to give up, stubbornly struggling to stay alive. But soon his strength gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. His final thought was filled with regret, that he might never see humanity's dawn. Then suddenly, Levi slammed his palm against the ground and sat up abruptly as if nothing had happened. He looked around in confusion, unable to understand what had just happened while his teammates shouted his name in disbelief. Slowly, Levi stood up and casually tossed his gun aside. At that exact moment, unnoticed by the others, a massive evil spirit behind them opened its mouth wide, preparing to devour the entire squad. Its sharp teeth were already closing in when the deputy captain sensed something wrong and quickly turned around. Before the creature could strike, Levi suddenly moved with lightning speed. He grabbed the giant spirit by the hair on its head, stopping the attack instantly. The monster's ugly face jerked backward, recoiling from the people it had planned to eat. Levi held the creature firmly with one hand. Across from him, the 4 surviving fighters stared in complete shock. Levi's face turned cold and emotionless. Calmly, he asked the creature why it only had one head and whether it planned to simply eat people. In that moment, Levi remembered something the director once told him, that anyone who eats people becomes a monster, and evil spirits like that must be destroyed. Hearing this, the creature burst into mocking laughter. It sneered and asked whether Levi planned to kill it with nothing but his bare hands. Ignoring the mockery completely, Levi simply tightened his grip and crushed the evil spirit's head in his palm. He coldly interrupted the creature's words, saying that what it had to say no longer mattered. Seeing this terrifying scene, the deputy captain instinctively covered his vital points while the remaining 3 soldiers huddled together in fear. Then suddenly, someone called out to Levi in a voice he knew very well. Levi turned around immediately and spotted Jasper. The young man was bound tightly in heavy iron chains. Levi could hardly believe his eyes. At the same time, the system's voice echoed in his mind, confirming that it was indeed Jasper. The system explained that it had sensed fluctuations from its father's power earlier. When it investigated, it found Jasper already severely injured. Jasper looked at Levi with tears filling his eyes and softly called his name. Without hesitation, Levi broke the iron chains and caught the staggering Jasper with both hands to help him stand. Levi quietly noted that Jasper must have suffered terribly here. Jasper hurriedly replied that he had believed he was dead and thought he had become a ghost. Levi quickly reassured him that wasn't true. He explained that everything happening around them was part of the strange, anomalous world he had mentioned before. Jasper began crying helplessly, his lips trembling. He admitted that even when he thought he was a ghost, he could still feel pain. At that moment, the system shouted urgently, urging Levi to help Jasper recover as quickly as possible. The Spirit Exterminator squad watched the entire scene in complete astonishment, unable to understand what was happening. One of the soldiers finally spoke up and assessed the situation, stating that they were currently dealing with a D-class spirit. Levi calmly explained that the spirit was actually Jasper, his closest friend, and that he intended to help him recover by allowing him to absorb yang energy. These words immediately caused a furious reaction. The deputy captain shouted angrily, accusing Levi of losing his mind and reminding everyone that all spirits were hostile toward humans. The other soldiers quickly supported him, pointing out that their captain had already suffered severe injuries earlier. The deputy captain raised his gun and aimed it directly at Jasper, declaring that as members of the extermination squad they could not allow themselves to be fooled. He pulled back the trigger and prepared to fire, grimly stating that he would settle the matter himself. A gunshot suddenly cracked through the tense silence of the room. Jasper flinched and squeezed his eyes shut in pure terror, convinced the bullet would strike him. But in the very same instant, Levi moved faster than anyone could follow, stretching out his hand and catching the speeding bullet in his palm as if it were nothing. With a calm but commanding voice, Levi declared that no one was allowed to hurt Jasper. He made it clear that Jasper had never harmed anyone and that he personally would stand in front of him and protect him from anyone who tried. The soldiers nearby stared in stunned silence. None of them could process what they had just witnessed. Someone catching a bullet with his bare hand felt completely impossible. The deputy captain's face twisted with anger. Using his authority, he shouted that Levi had lost his mind, accusing him of protecting a spirit while spirits everywhere were slaughtering innocent people. Levi didn't back down for even a second. With steady confidence, he said Jasper would never hurt anyone and that he trusted him completely. The deputy captain refused to let the matter go. He demanded to know how Levi could possibly guarantee that this particular spirit was different from the others. Levi looked at him with a serious expression and replied firmly that he personally vouched for Jasper's character. His tone left no room for doubt. He even added that he didn't fully understand everything that was going on around them. But regardless of the confusion, he made it clear that harming Jasper was absolutely forbidden. The deputy captain's face darkened even further. In a cold voice, he reminded Levi that they were members of a spirit extermination squad, and their duty was to destroy spirits without hesitation. Then he raised his weapon again and bluntly declared that the situation was simple. Either they killed the spirits first, or the spirits would eventually kill them. At that moment, a flash of icy anger appeared in Levi's eyes. Without warning, he lunged forward, his fist clenched tightly as he rushed straight toward the deputy captain. The deputy captain panicked instantly, thinking Levi had finally snapped and was attacking him. But the punch whistled past him instead, missing him completely. Startled, the deputy captain quickly turned around. Behind him stood a horrifying spirit, its face twisted into a grotesque and terrifying expression. He shouted in disbelief that the spirit had only just appeared. There was no way Levi should have noticed it so quickly. Before anyone could react further, Levi's fist slammed forward with incredible force and smashed straight into the spirit's face. Levi calmly explained that the creature had clearly been preparing to devour them. Because of that, he had no choice but to destroy it immediately. The deputy captain stood there speechless. The rest of the squad stared in shock and confusion. Their captain had just eliminated a C-class evil spirit with a single punch. One of the soldiers nervously reminded the others that Levi had once destroyed another spirit of the same rank with nothing but his bare hands. The deputy captain suddenly recalled something important. According to everything they knew, ordinary physical attacks should not work against spirits at all. Levi simply smiled faintly and praised Jasper. He mentioned that Jasper had sensed the spirit's bloodthirsty presence the moment it appeared. One of the subordinates immediately guessed that Jasper, even as a D-class spirit, must have felt the presence of the lurking C-class evil spirit earlier and silently warned Levi. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed throughout the room. The team looked around nervously while the strange and eerie voice continued to reverberate through the air. Jasper trembled as he spoke, explaining that those creatures were the ones who had captured him earlier. They had bitten him repeatedly, causing him unbearable pain. Hearing this made Levi's anger flare instantly. His fists tightened so hard that it almost felt as if flames were burning within them. Grinding his teeth, Levi demanded to know where those creatures were hiding. He promised that he would make them pay for what they had done. Jasper looked at him in surprise, slightly shrinking back after hearing Levi's intense words. But after a moment, a small smile appeared on his face. Realizing he now had someone willing to protect him, Jasper nodded happily. He glanced around cautiously. At that moment, the system's voice appeared again, explaining that the enemies had to reveal themselves before Levi's Crimson Fire ability could activate. Then Jasper slowly raised his hand and pointed toward a certain direction ahead. Without hesitation, Levi stomped the ground and shot forward with incredible speed, moving like a blur. The bone spirit shrieked in panic, screaming that the flames were burning him alive. However, Levi's attack was far too powerful. With just one devastating strike, the spirit's existence was completely erased. Landing smoothly on the ground, Levi looked around calmly and asked in an emotionless voice if there were any more enemies nearby. Jasper quickly pointed toward another direction, eagerly guiding Levi again. Using the momentum of his movement, Levi launched himself into the air and rushed straight toward the next hidden spirit. The spirit's face twisted in agony as Levi's attack struck. It let out a final scream before being completely destroyed. Jasper grew more and more excited, pointing out new directions one after another. Bright flashes of light filled the room as spirits cried out before disappearing. Everyone watching was left completely stunned. The deputy captain stood pale and speechless. Watching Levi fight so fiercely, he could hardly believe this was the same captain he once considered timid. After landing once more, Levi calmly asked again if there were any enemies left. Jasper happily replied that there were none remaining nearby. The deputy captain suddenly realized something terrifying. The enemies had actually used Jasper, a D-class spirit, as bait to lure in multiple C-class evil spirits. At that moment, Jasper suddenly sensed something again. His face turned pale as he trembled and clung tightly to Levi's shoulder in fear. Just then, a strange red glow flashed behind the large gate nearby. Still shaking, Jasper clutched Levi tightly and explained that an extremely powerful female evil spirit was waiting outside. The deputy captain glanced at the compass device in his hand. The moment he saw the reading, his face turned completely pale. A deep, instinctive fear gripped his heart. Cold sweat ran down his forehead as he stuttered that the spirit outside had to be an A-class entity. Hearing that terrifying classification, the squad immediately raised their weapons. Panic spread quickly since they were only a D-class team. Levi remained calm and serious. Turning slightly toward Jasper, he quietly asked if this was the spirit who had been tormenting him. Jasper clung pitifully to Levi's shoulder and nodded while trembling. He explained that this woman had hung him up and allowed others to beat and bite him. Levi's expression instantly darkened after hearing that. At the same time, the system confirmed Jasper's story and labeled the female spirit as extremely cruel. Without hesitation, Levi gave a cold order to the people behind him. He told them to make sure Jasper stayed safely behind his back. Right then, a massive tree was suddenly ripped from the ground behind the gate. Its tangled roots spread like the fingers of a monstrous hand as it flew violently toward the squad. Levi jumped forward instantly, placing himself between the tree and his team. With one powerful kick, he slammed the flying tree straight into the ground. The female spirit stared in disbelief. She couldn't accept that a human could possess such terrifying strength. Before she could even recover from the shock, she suddenly saw the same tree flying back toward her at incredible speed. She quickly shot upward into the air to dodge the attack at the last possible moment. But in the next instant, Levi appeared right behind her and launched a powerful kick. The undead woman glanced back briefly, but the moment she saw Levi, her expression tightened with sudden tension. A flash of light cut across her face. Then another followed immediately, and this time the strike landed perfectly. The powerful blow blasted the spirit out of the air. She crashed into the ground with a thunderous impact, causing a violent explosion. The entire squad stood frozen in amazement. They could hardly believe their eyes as they realized their captain had just crushed an A-class spirit with overwhelming ease. The deputy captain hurriedly activated the compass device again. After carefully studying the readings showing the speed and power of the spiritual fluctuations, he first wondered if the sensor had malfunctioned. But the more he analyzed the data, the clearer it became. There was no mistake. The spirit they had just faced truly belonged to the terrifying A-class. At the same time, Levi stood quietly on the lawn, his posture relaxed yet alert. His eyes were fixed on the defeated enemy, who had been slammed so hard that her body was now embedded into the cracked wall behind her. The undead woman slowly lifted her hand and touched her damaged head several times, trying to regain her senses. As the pain settled in, rage filled her expression. She snarled that no ordinary human could possibly possess such monstrous strength and demanded to know who Levi truly was. Levi's expression remained dark and cold. Without any hesitation, he replied that she had dared to torment Jasper, and because of that, he had come here for one simple reason: revenge. Hearing those words, the spirit woman slowly turned her head and shot a hateful glare toward Jasper and the others standing behind Levi. With obvious contempt in her voice, she muttered that Levi was nothing more than a weak human. To her, it was even more pathetic that he was protecting a mere D-class spirit. Jasper trembled again under the weight of her cruel gaze. Her eyes suddenly widened so much that they looked ready to burst from their sockets. Opening her mouth in fury, she roared that humans were disgusting creatures who deserved nothing but death. Right after shouting those words, she pushed off the ground with explosive force. Her body shot upward into the air, while her long claws stretched forward, ready to strike. But before she could even launch her attack, Levi's hand suddenly appeared and clamped tightly around her neck. He lifted her effortlessly into the air, holding her there as if she weighed nothing and leaving her completely unable to fight back. The two of them crashed down together a second later. With a heavy thud, they slammed into the ground, and Levi continued pressing her down firmly, refusing to let her move. Slowly and mercilessly, Levi raised his fist high above the spirit woman. Then his fist came crashing down again and again, delivering a relentless storm of furious blows to her body. The scene quickly became so brutal that the soldiers watching from the side felt chills run down their spines. Some of them whispered nervously that at this moment their captain looked far more terrifying than the spirit itself. The more they stared at him, the more uneasy they felt. The group slowly huddled closer together, still unable to believe that the ruthless fighter in front of them was truly the same Levi they once knew. The spirit's upper body began twisting as her true form slowly revealed itself. Yet, even in that state, she stubbornly declared that no matter how powerful Levi might be, a mere human could never truly kill her. At that moment, Levi's expression turned even colder, almost frightening to look at. In a low voice, he calmly replied that everything he had done so far was simply beating her. Then he slowly lifted his fist again. This time, however, his hand was surrounded by burning blue flames. The moment the spirit woman saw the eerie blue fire, fear flooded her face. She desperately shook her head, struggling wildly while begging him to extinguish the flames. But Levi's voice remained icy. He told her plainly that those flames existed for one purpose: to burn her alive. The next instant, his flaming fist slammed straight into her skull. A horrifying scream tore through the air. Levi stepped back and watched silently as the spirit writhed helplessly in the blue fire, her body slowly crumbling into ash.